There you go, ring them again. One more time. Loading. Up. Up. Alright, 3-shot group with the X-Tac 55 grain, 28-29, average 3-shot for the PWS. Hey everybody, Rob Orgel, your favorite silencer nut job junkie. In today's video, I wanted to dive into the PWS versus the HK series rifle. Now, of course, you already saw in the item description or video description that it's going to be the HK Mr556A4 versus the PWS, and this is kind of a weird name. It's the MK111 Mod 2M. Basically, that it's fully ambidextrous. Now, I'm going to break this down, and I hope what's the most granular video on the internet of a head-to-head comparison. Now, in the attention gainer you saw in the video, you see that we are going to shoot this rifle, both rifles, side by side out to 500 yards on paper. Now, we would have gone further, however, there is some limitations of the 1:6 power optic, so we're going to stay within the 500 yards. Now, for an 11.5/12-inch gun, that's a good poke to find that the bullets are still stabilized and otherwise. So we're going to be testing in CQC style up drills. That means as you would move through your house and snap the rifle up and fire that 1 to 5 rounds, for example, we're going to see which rifle has the faster up drill time, as well as different types of ammunition. I believe we went through about 6 or 7 different flavors of ammunition, same day, side by side, with velocities and groupings to decide really what was the best performers inside of these rifles, so that in the end we can say, of the 2 different rifles, maybe you end up having a favorite, maybe some areas is more specific to your needs, and in the end, I'll also disclose which one, after all of these tests, has become my favorite. Now, as you know, I'm the metal tube nut job with all of them behind me. I think I've got 175 right now. Now, we did stick with one suppressor throughout the entire video, so I wanted to explain to you why we did that for this test. Now, both of them have suppressor settings. Let's start with the HK. There is a non-suppressed and suppressed setting. With a non-suppressed setting, it runs obviously very reliable with no suppressor. The suppressor setting, unfortunately, as it comes out of the box, it wants low back pressure suppressors in the suppressor setting. So if you have a full back pressure old school suppressor, you're going to find it ejecting a little bit aggressively. You might get some gas in the face. But if you're running a lower back pressure suppressor like the Huxworks, the Velos, and in this example, the Velos 556K, as you see behind me, that you'll see throughout the video, both of them have the same suppressor. So the HK out of the box wants standard no suppressor, or it wants a low back pressure suppressor in the suppressor setting. Now the PWS, 2 PWS's merit. They have 3 positions. 1 is standard no suppressor. 2 is just ideal on all of the low back pressure suppressors. And 3 is for very high back pressure suppressors. And you know, you can play with some ammo and kind of get a little bit of a mixed bag of all of those. I've tested a few different things. And in the end, I feel like number 2 is really just the middle perfect setting for no. If you do take the suppressor off, you will get failure to hold open on the last round, but it usually does still run reliable depending upon the ammunition you run. So setting 1 is really where it belongs. 2 with a suppressor, particularly low back pressure suppressor, and 3 for a very high back pressure suppressor. So in the end, the PWS does have more suppressor modularity. If you say, well, I really still want the HK, which I can appreciate why, they do sell different jets. So you can change out the jet settings and have a higher back pressure suppressor or whatever it is you might like. For me, I always run low back pressure suppressors anyways, so it actually really fits my needs as it comes. So to each his own as you decide which one is a better suppressor host. In the end, they both have lots of merit. If you're an old back pressure kind of guy, you would say, well, I'll get the PWS then because I don't want to buy a new suppressor and I'm saving money, in which case you're probably not interested in the HK anyways. But if you are an HK guy and you do have high back pressure suppressors because of nostalgia or other reasons, then you can replace that jet setting and have it more appropriate to the low back pressure suppressor. All right, without beating around the bush too much, guys, if you like this content, please consider like, subscribing, all that good stuff that YouTube hates. They don't like me talking about silencers or host weapons or up drills or engagements. So please do me a favor. Let the video play all the way through, even if you lose interest, and leave your phone in the other room. That helps the system, as well as sharing this link with mom, dad, or whomever to say, hey, this is nifty stuff, and it's a different approach to how to evaluate firearms that I don't think has been done yet. All right, guys, without beating around the bush, let's get into it. Here you've got the weights. The HK is 9 pounds, 8.9 ounces. The PWS is 9.5 ounces lighter. That's a substantial delta. Now moving into the shot timer, it's set to random, so it goes off in 2 to 8 seconds. 0.43, that's not that fast. Usually I'm a little faster. First one of the day. 0.41, usually I'm faster. What's going on, Rob? Pick it up. 0.34, that's closer to my average. One more time, just call those first 2 warm-ups. A little bit lower on that one, 0.38. All right, now we're gonna roll into the NSR drills. That's 5 rounds to the chest as quickly as possible. Button's been pressed. Okay, 5 rounds of the chest. First one's a little low, is still on the way up. The rest are all at the suprasternal notch, which is where I'm aiming, upper heart area. Total time, 1:01. Let's run it again. Button's been pushed. Ooh, I slowed down on that last one. 1:11. Review, shot 1.36, again back in my norm. 2, 3, 4. 4 was at 0.82. I had a big split on number 5. The split on number 5 is 0.29. Big delay. Let's run that one again. Pick it up, Rob. All still in the upper heart area. 1:04. Do I have enough to do one more? I got 3 rounds left. We'll run that last 3. Okay, 3 rounds, 0.68. First shot, 0.39. Maintaining that average. Let's switch guns. Okay, I've got my PWS now. Not going to mark those bullet holes. We know which ones will be new. We'll do 1 rounds to warm up again. A little bit faster, 0.34. Again. Whew, I false started. I got excited on that one. 0.34 again. Well, I'm consistent. One more. .34, very consistent. Let's roll up to the 5-shot exercise. Button's been pressed. NSR, 5 rounds. I sent the bonus one. 1:09. Let's review shot 5. 0.97. Shot 5 was 0.97. The bonus put me at 1:09. Run it again. Button's been pressed. I fell asleep. I was off in La La Land when that timer went off. 1:06. One more time, assuming I have ammo. I was much slower on that one. I felt it. Total time, 1:04. Well, it felt slow. I guess it wasn't. One last one. Looks like I have enough ammo. One more. Here we go. Button's been pressed. That felt fast. 0.89. So maybe because it's a little bit lighter, we've weighed them. This one is a hair lighter, but I think maybe because it's lighter on the front end, it's allowing me to get the up drills just a hair faster. Both of them feel incredibly smooth for these up drills. All right, that wraps this up. Touched him on his orange dot right on his face. That's fun. Here I wanted to give you the opportunity to see how we're doing our tests. And what we're doing is putting the 2 rifles side by side. We've got a chronograph, which is made by Garmin, set between the 2. And we're running one rifle then the other to maintain all the same environmentals, barometric pressure. X-Tac 55 grain is 28.29. 28.29 average 3 shot for the PWS. And then we switch rifles and run the same experiment. So there's no room to say it took place on a different day or that the experiment wasn't fair in the utmost of every condition we can possibly control. We also did not shoot 6 different groups and pick our favorite. We quite simply fired 3 rounds each rifle for each ammunition, and then went from there, judging by how the paper behaved. Shot average on the HK with Next, we've got the groupings. 0.38 inches on the HK with 77 SIG. That's just over 2,000 feet a second. 1.5 inches with the 40 grain Fiocchi at 2,500 feet per second and change. The PWS gave me a 0.75 with the 40 grain Fiocchi at 2,600 feet per second and change. So 0.75 with the PWS on 77 SIG. You can see why I like this SIG. Here we have the PMC X-Tac. It only does so good. It averages 1.2 and 1.3 on both rifles. Here you have the HK's group. So in the end, it's good ammo for a lot of things, just not actually super accurate. Now here is the 1,000 yard paper range, and I wanted you to also see how we set up, lay down the mat, fire 3 rounds, switch rifle, fire 3 rounds. This is 500 yards. I can't see the paper. It's a 6 power optic. There's no spotting system out here. So I literally just shoot 3 rounds, swap rifles, pack it up, head to the pits, and see how it groups. Now at 500 yards with a 6 power optic, of course there are some limitations in the level of accuracy I can provide. So I'm going to share this information, but I fully expect people to not believe me. This is the HK MR556A4. This is the 100 yard zero, point of aim, point of impact, 1.2 inches. At 300 yards, I'm using the SIG optic, and I aimed here with 300 yard stadia line, and the bullet fell into the top center abdomen, similar to the point of aim for 100 yards. 2.5 inches at 300 yards. So I assumed this would be approximately the 400 yard stadia line. So in my notes, I wrote down use 400 next time to hit 300. So I went to the 500 yard line and I shot the berm just to verify. And I decided to use the 700 yard hold line, and I held here. Now of 3 rounds, only 1 struck paper, and that is up here in the top left corner, probably signifying that I should use the 650 yard line for the next engagement. And yes, there is a little bit of wind. Now moving over to the PWS, and this is where people are going to call BS, I'm sure. This is the PWS SBR. Here is my 100 yard point of aim, point of impact, and I've got 1 inch at 100 yards, point aim, point impact. Now at 300 yards, I did the same thing, aimed at the chest with 300 yard stadia line, and similar to the HK, it fell into the upper torso or upper abdomen area. However, it gave me a 1.25 inch group, which is very impressive. Now this is the part you're not going to believe me. Again, I shot the berm to get an idea of the strike path, and I used the 650 yard stadia line right here, and that's the group it produced. This is a 650 yard stadia line at 500 yards, 1.25 inch group. Now I would say if somebody posted this video that is not possible. However, it just did it. So I'm going to repeat the exercise. Because the test went so well at the 500 yard line, I decided to set it all back up again. Now you can see the camera angle across the road. The road is 400 yards, then the 300 yard line, and so on. You can't really see the berm from here. It's kind of small. First running the HK, then switching over and running the PWS. The SIG 77 grain ammunition really does fly very well. It's a little bit slow, but it is impressive. We're hopping in the truck, and you can see this at the 500 yard line across the road. There's my pile of brass, and we're heading down range. This was giving me a great opportunity to show you the range that I'm at most of the time, particularly the 1,000 yard range of the range I'm at most of the time. You're going to see the flag blowing from right to left, and you'll see how that affects the groups, especially such slow ammunition. HK target. Not a bad group. 1, 2, 3. Again, that's the wins, and that was me holding for the 650 yard line. Not a bad group. Probably still MOA. Now here. How interesting. It keyholed an old one here and here, and I did change my point of aim. I was holding from here to here with the 650 and the 600 yard line. Again, the winds pushed me over. It's odd that it printed the same spot again, but you know, if you have your doubts, I could see why that sounds like bullshit, but here it is. 1, 2, and 3. This is a rehit. These are old, already marked ones. There's nothing else on the target. So I'll give you a close-up here. That's an oblong. That's a round 2. Because earlier you'll see the photo. This is 1, 2, and 3. 1.25 to 500. Call bullshit if you want, but here's an almost repeat of that group minus this little flyer. So the core group size here is, that's the furthest one, 6.5 inches for this guy. And then on the HK, core group is just about 6 inches flat on this one. Very impressive for 12-inch guns shooting 500 yards. Paper breakdown, we've got the 77 grain ammunition out of the HK and its group sizes. Feel free to pause the video. HK with 77 MagTech ammunition, PWS with MagTech 77. HK with green tip, nobody seems to like green tip. It's great for the military and high velocity, but accuracy is not a strong suit. PWS with green tip, not ideal. Now, having wrapped up all of that experimentation, I decided I was very impressed with the SIG ammunition for obvious reasons. Those groups were very impressive. They were just slow. So my hopes were in testing the SIG 40 grain varmint ammunition that I might gain a lot more velocity and maintain a certain level of accuracy. So I repeated all these tests again, 100, 300, and 500 yards. Here's me packing things back up. I believe this is the 300-yard line. Here's the box in case you want to know what the ammunition looks like, in case you fall in love with it. And unfortunately, it didn't shoot as good as I had hoped. It did shoot well enough for most predator hunters. However, the 77 was so much more accurate, I would probably choose it. And I think Federal does a good job too. Well, I was hoping to have had my scope camera by now, but it still has not yet come. So you'll just have to take it from this perspective only. I apologize. What I have found, and you probably saw it on the 1,000-yard data points, is that the BDC is very accurate for green tip ammunition because of its higher chamber pressure and its flatter trajectory. If you use the 77s, you get great consistency, great accuracy, as you saw in the previous content. However, for the steel range, there is a limitation in accuracy. You know, there's a couple times it's just above, just low, just right, and you hold the same spot, shoot again, and it seems to give you your hit. And that's just because green tip ammo is just not as accurate as 77 match grain ammunition, obviously. So let's take this guy to steel. This is the H&K. We'll start with him. We're gonna ring one of the two hundos real quick. Kind of simple stuff, and you can hear the delay time, the ding. That's a 220-yard target. Now we're going to move to the 300-yard target right there. It's 330 yards using the 300-yard stadia line. Here is the 440-yard target. You can hear the delay and the lighter impact. Now we're going out to the 550-yard area. Just below it. There it is. You can hear that delay one more time. So the HK is delivering excellent accuracy out to distance. Now these targets aren't small. These are like, 20, 24-inch targets. So to be engaging the way I am, you've seen paper and what these guns are capable of. But to ring steel and to match the BDC of the reticle, that ammunition paired best for rapid engagement. All right, let's switch over to the PWS. Okay, I've now got my PWS on the table here and the HK is laying next to it. The bolt did battery a little bit sluggish, and I have not cleaned any of these. I'm just going to keep running them as long as I can and see how far they'll go before they need a cleaning. And this one's starting to kind of communicate that cleaning is necessary soon. All right, let's do the same thing. We're going to start at the 220-yard line. Again, this is green tip ammunition. There's the 24-inch steel. Yeah, kind of obvious how that went. All right, this is the 330-yard. 440. Kind of a light ding to it. Let's try that one more time, see if I can get a louder, more pronounced impact. There we go. 550. A little over the top, holding the same spot, 550. A little over the top again, we'll drop it to that 500 area. Now the wind's picked up and that was slightly to the left. There you go, ring them again. One more time. So that was the 500-yard stadia line I used. Like before, we're finding the PWS gives me a higher velocity than the H&K, both of which are incredibly accurate, both of which are very capable rifles. Now for the breakdown. All right, breaking down the winner. For me, I say the HK wins. Now I'll break down why it wins in each category. However, all things considered, even though both had an equal amount of victories, I would say that the HK's for me, were more important than the PWS's. Now let's break that down. First, the HK wins in its ambi feature. That paddle style bolt catch and bolt release, I think, is the cat's meow. Both of them do have full ambi features, but the HK with their bolt catch bolt release, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, has a ton of merit. So for ambi, HK wins. Price point, obviously PWS is substantially cheaper, more cost-effective. So if money is a big issue or you want to save a couple bucks, the PWS is cheaper and very good for its price. Having said that, I will not discuss price anymore because of YouTube's new rules. Sexy. I think the HK is just one of the sexiest rifles that's going to show up to a carbine class. I think whatever class you go to, should you bring this rifle, people are going to walk over to you and have some questions or just ask you if they can touch it. And you can look away if you'd like, but it is a sexy gun and people, like other men, will want to touch your rifle. Okay, speed drills. Obviously, the PWS did have a little bit less nose weight, so as you saw in the rapid up drills, the PWS did save me a little bit of time and maintained a higher level of consistency. That I would say is noteworthy if this is something you're going to train with in those up drills. And if you're serious about home defense and all of that, and you do want to get highly proficient in these techniques, you should consider checking out some classes that specifically train these topics. Obviously, I am plugging myself, Emergency Response Tactical. All right, after speed drills, let's go into highly trusted. What I mean by highly trusted is if you were to be in certain dark alleys across the world with specialty groups, you would likely find HK rifles in their hands as opposed to PWS rifles in their hands. That's not to say PWS isn't good. It's just not having the reputation that HK has. And of course, the price comes with that high-end reputation. Next is velocity. Now you saw the PWS perform better at the longer distances, not just in accuracy. In some places the HK did better, in some places the PWS did better for accuracy, but in velocity the PWS started at a higher speed. Because it was a higher speed, it had a little bit less bullet drop, and in some cases it was noticeable. So the velocity point goes to the PWS. Pretty much every ammo we tested was 50 to 100 feet per second faster out of the PWS than the HK, which is noteworthy. Now, sniper. I give them both a point for sniper. One, because I think it's kind of funny to call 11.5 or 12-inch gun sniper rifles, but they are very, very accurate. And if you were to accommodate them with the proper optic, you could do wonderful things with these rifles. They are highly capable. So I wanted both of them to have the sniper point. In the end, you could argue over the PWS and its anomaly being the 500-yard 1.25-inch group. Or you could argue that the HK consistently held a little bit better groups across the board in all the ammo. Most of the time, that would be a fair statement. So in the end, I think they're both incredibly accurate guns, more accurate than most of us will ever call on them to be. Reliability. HK gets the point for reliability, and the reason I chose that is when you buy an HK upper, if you just buy the upper, it comes with a bolt. It comes with a buffer and buffer spring. The idea is they want you to use their system, and it slams home. It is aggressive. It's a little bit harder to lock back than a standard AR-15, but I believe they did that so that they could increase the aggressiveness of their piston system and how hard the system runs for that reason of reliability. I put a lot of rounds through these two rifles before I started filming and while filming. Having said that, with all these rounds through the rifle, most people will choose to clean their guns. I don't. I push my rifles as far as I can until they need to be cleaned as kind of a test and experiment. How far can it go before it needs to be cleaned? The HK is saying to me, I can go a long time, I don't care. The PWS is beginning to say, I need some lubrication to get through the day, and you should consider cleaning me soon. So for reliability, durability, longevity of your range day, the HK gets the point. Finally, overall weight. PWS, obviously, that 0.6 pound, that is a substantial number. So if you're going to carry this rifle all day or hold perimeter security, it's going to be taxing to have the additional half pound inside the handguard where the piston system is. That's a bit heavy on the front end. And as you saw in the up drills, it did have an effect. So I will say, weight-wise, the PWS wins. Now, if you're going to talk about suppressors, both of them are very suppressor-friendly, as I mentioned earlier, but the PWS does offer a third setting instead of just two settings. That, I think, could be a point for PWS if you're into high back pressure suppressor. So in the end, really, I choose the HK. It is my favorite of the two. If you choose the PWS, you're not wrong. It is a phenomenal rifle. Both of them were solid performers. I am not in the business of selling rifles. I'm just in the business of testing exhausting, and I thoroughly enjoyed this test. If you guys want to see more of this, please make sure you throw a comment and what you'd like to see tested next. For example, the 16-inch AK versus the 12-inch HK, or the 12-inch PWS versus the 14.5 PWS. I can do all of those, and I would look forward to do a lot more for you. Your comments drive us and give us the ideas for tomorrow. We appreciate you. We'll see you in the comments, and as always, stay safe.